have the privilege of introducing Carolina Cornejo, and she will be a freshman at St. Olaf College in the fall. And a fun fact about her is that she has an addiction to the lime hot Cheetos. Um, Her project is titled Survey of Online Resources for Clinicians Caring for Children with Musculoskeletal Conditions. Good luck.
Thank you so much. Hello, my name is Carolina Cornejo, and this summer I had the honor of conducting clinical research alongside Dr. Colleen Sabatini and Barbara Pierre-Louis, a medical student at Florida State University. My research consisted of surveying online resources for clinicians caring for children with musculoskeletal conditions. Yes. Okay. Anecdotally, our research team believes that there is a large unmet need for surgical education and resources in low-income countries, specifically for clinicians working within pediatric orthopedics. There has been an increase in the number of surgical procedures performed and the research that has been published with regards to pediatric orthopedics. Access to this information is critical for providing optimal care for patients. However, access to this information has not been equitable globally. Clinicians in high-income countries tend to have personal or institutional access to journals or have access to various online resources through memberships in different orthopedic and medical societies. Surgeons in LICs, low-income countries, often lack institutional benefits and the personal financial resources to be able to access these sites. This is why open access to pediatric orthopedic resources is so important and vital and would remove barriers for surgeons in low-income countries. The objective of this research project is to explore what content and resources are available for clinicians in low-income countries through an online analysis. We also want to investigate the restrictions in place that create barriers for these physicians to be able to view content needed for the care of their patients. The methods that were used during the research process included identifying orthopedic websites using many search terms such as pediatric orthopedics, clubfoot, hip dysplasia, and much more. We then collected standard data from these sites, including types of content, including video, written, didactics, whether it was password encrypted, if a membership was required, if there's a fee to access the content, and language or languages of the websites. In total, 164 orthopedic websites were found, and only 49% of them contained pediatric orthopedic content. From these 81 websites, 72% of them had membership or login requirements, 50% were free, and 46% required a fee ranging from $20 to $1,000 annually. In terms of the language of the pediatric orthopedic websites, 60% of them were in English, 19% were in English and in an additional language, and 17% of them were in a language other than English, including 7 websites in Spanish. Some key points to take away from the data are that only 28% didn't require a login, half of them didn't require a fee, and the number that both didn't require a fee and login is only 30%. There are limitations to this study, such as not being able to identify or find all orthopedic-based websites because the search was in English or Spanish on Google. So, for example, if we were to look up like clubfoot in English, we'd only get something in English. We wouldn't get like the websites that are in Arabic or in French, per se. So that was one of the limitations. Some of the websites also required a login to access the content, which led us to having incomplete data because we couldn't view it. And we also didn't have enough time to evaluate the quality or volume of the content on each of the websites that we gathered data on. So that would be one of our next steps. In conclusion, while the internet may have pediatric orthopedic educational resources that may be useful to healthcare workers and LICs, these resources may not be easily accessible or applicable to surgeons and LICs, which is critical for patients to be able to receive optimal care. It is evident that there is limited information that is free and easy to access. In the near future, our research team plans on sending out a survey for clinicians and LICs, as well as having formal interviews with surgeons in order to better understand what barriers exist in accessing pediatric orthopedic educational content. And an additional next step is to complete the analysis of websites in order to ensure that there is complete information for each site. Here are my references. And I'd like to acknowledge and thank Corey, the Doris Duke Foundation, for sponsoring me, Barbara, and last but not least, Dr. Colleen Sabatini, for giving me the wonderful opportunity to participate in this program and conduct valuable research. Thank you so much.
Well done, Carolina. Very interesting and a relevant topic for the orthopedic community at large. So what kinds of questions do we have for Carolina in this work?
Carolina, I'm wondering if when this research expands, will you also include some of the secondary author self-posting sites? So I had mentioned this earlier back in the summer that there's a site called ResearchGate where authors can basically create their own profile and put all their posters up or put all their papers up. So that's a way I've gotten around paywalls so that other people can access it. So will you dig into some of that? And there are a couple of other sites too. Do you think you'll dig into those and see if that opens up some of the access to LIC researchers?
Absolutely. I think that we're going to try to dive even deeper than what we did during this study and try to look at more various different types of websites and instead of focusing on websites like Global Health and kind of like the general ones. Another next step that we want to do is eventually create our own website that's easily accessible. So it'd be smart to look into websites like the one you're talking about.
That's a great idea. What other kinds of things could you put on the website like that?
That's a good question. I'd have to look into other ones to see what would be more convenient for different people. Like I mentioned, the next step is to conduct interviews. So after that, we can take in information and see what surgeons want to see and what would be easily accessible for them.
Sweet. Good answer.
More and more textbooks, of course, are going up on Google Books. So you can get an idea of normalizing the surgical education, for example, for LICs and HICs so that there's no bias in the ability to perform different types of techniques.
Exactly.
Sonali?
I was wondering, I know earlier in maybe the journal clubs, we talked about how there are some journals that are kind of predatory, where they charge too much for membership, they charge too much for publishing, or they're not careful about like the peer review process and stuff. And so I was wondering if maybe one of the problems with the access might be like low quality of journals available to them, if that was something.
We didn't look into that, but one of our next steps was to look at the type of content and if it was actually something that would be helpful for surgeons, because some of them, I mean, there could be like hundreds and hundreds of videos or journals put out on websites, but are they actually good content? So that's something that we want to look into in the future.
Yeah. Denisa?
Hi. Fantastic job on your presentation. I was just wondering, and maybe you mentioned this, but I was curious what made you decide to pursue this project and if there's like personal significance to you in terms of your research.
That's a great question. So Dr. Sabatini, as I mentioned, I think I mentioned this in my flash talk, she often goes to Africa and she does surgeries and all that. And she's noticed the lack of resources that the surgeons had over there. I mean, obviously she had to go over there because there were issues with the surgeons over there, maybe not having enough educational resources, like I mentioned. So for me personally, I've always been interested in like foot and ankle surgery and like orthopedics and stuff like that. So that's kind of how we put our two ideas together, but it mostly came from Dr. Sabatini's experience in Africa.
Excellent. Well done, Carolina. Congratulations.